3,000 years ago, the city of Jericho stood as one of the most formidable fortresses the ancient world had ever seen. Its walls were not merely stone and mortar. They were a declaration of power, rising from the desert floor like a mountain carved by human hands. Travelers who approached from the surrounding plains would stop and stare, their courage draining before they even reached the gates. Merchants whispered about it along trade routes. Soldiers who had seen 100 battles admitted the walls of Jericho were unlike anything they had encountered. The city sat at a critical crossroads, controlling access to the entire region, and its rulers knew exactly what they had. They believed themselves untouchable. But inside those legendary walls, behind a small window carved directly into the thick stone, lived a woman whose name history would never forget. Her name was Rahab. But Rahab did not just tremble. She listened, and she began to believe. Her home was built directly into the city wall itself, a detail that placed her physically and socially on the margins. As a prostitute, she was tolerated but never respected, seen but never truly acknowledged. Yet that position gave her something no palace official or military commander possessed: information. Every kind of person passed through her door: soldiers returning from distant campaigns, merchants carrying news from foreign lands, travelers who had seen things no one else in the city had witnessed. And in the weeks leading up to what would become the most terrifying season Jericho had ever known, the stories she heard were unlike anything before. A massive army was gathering beyond the Jordan River. Not just any army. One led by a god who had parted the waters of the Red Sea, who had crushed the armies of Egypt, who had destroyed kingdoms far more powerful than Jericho. The entire city trembled at the rumors. Then one night, the moment that would change everything arrived quietly, without fanfare. Two cloaked figures slipped through Jericho's gates just as they were closing for the evening, moving quickly through the narrow, shadowed streets. They were Israelite spies, sent personally by Joshua to assess the city's defenses before the invasion. They had not gone unnoticed. Someone had spotted them entering the city, and word reached the king of Jericho almost immediately. Within minutes, the king's ruthless guards were mobilized, moving through the streets with torches and weapons, hunting the two strangers down. The spies had only one place to turn: the one house where a desperate, searching soul might offer shelter to men who represented the very God she had already decided to trust. That the God of Israel was real, and that Jericho's days were already numbered. The guards outside were not asking politely. They were demanding. In the flickering light of an oil lamp, Rahab looked at the two men she had hidden beneath bundles of flax on her rooftop, and then she looked toward the door, shaking on its hinges. The weight of that moment is almost impossible to overstate. She was being asked to make a decision that carried the full consequence of life and death, not just for the spies, but for herself and every member of her family. Turning the men over would have made her a hero in the eyes of the king. Protecting them meant execution if she was discovered. But Rahab had already made her choice before the guards even arrived. She opened the door with steady hands and looked the king's men directly in the eye. Yes, she told them, 2 men had come to her house, but they had left before the city gates closed for the night. She pointed urgently toward the open desert road, telling them if they moved quickly, they could still catch them. The guards believed her completely and rushed off into the darkness. It was a lie delivered with extraordinary composure under extraordinary pressure. The spies remained hidden on her roof, safe beneath the flax, completely unaware of the performance that had just saved their lives. Rahab had not only protected 2 strangers, she had defied the direct order of a king and staked her entire future on the promise of a God she had never personally encountered. When the danger had passed, Rahab went to the roof and made her terms clear. She had risked everything for them, and now she needed their word. The spies agreed without hesitation. They gave her one specific instruction: tie a scarlet cord in the window of her home. When the Israelite army came, any house marked with that red rope would be protected. Every person inside would be spared. Rahab lowered the two men down the outside of the massive wall using a thick rope, watching them disappear into the night below. Then she tied the scarlet cord in her window and waited. That single thread of red against ancient stone became the most important symbol of her life, a mark of faith, of courage, and of a covenant made in the dark, crumbling into rubble in a cloud of dust and destruction that could be seen for miles across the desert plain. For 6 full days they marched around the city in complete silence. No battle cries, no siege weapons, just the sound of feet and the low drone of priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant. The people of Jericho watched from the walls, confused and increasingly terrified. On the 7th day, everything changed. The army marched 7 times around the city, and then the ram's horn trumpet sounded in a long, thunderous blast. A great shout rose from tens of thousands of voices simultaneously, and the walls of Jericho, those legendary, impenetrable walls, collapsed completely. But when the dust finally settled and the ruins of Jericho lay broken across the ground, one section of the wall remained standing, perfectly intact, and from its window a scarlet cord moved gently in the morning wind. Rahab and every member of her family walked out of that rubble alive. She was not merely spared, she was welcomed fully into the Israelite community, given a new identity, a new home, and a new future. She married, built a family, and her descendants became part of one of the most significant bloodlines in all of recorded history, eventually leading to King David and, centuries later, to Jesus Christ himself. The woman who had been dismissed, marginalized, and defined by her lowest circumstances became one of the most celebrated figures of faith in human history. She is listed among the heroes of faith in the book of Hebrews, honored not for her perfection, but for her courage. Rahab's story is a reminder that the most unlikely people in the most desperate moments can make choices that echo across 3,000 years.